At 38, Vincent had the kind of face that people glanced past. Average height, average build, dark hair kept professionally short, a trimmed beard that suggested responsibility without drawing attention. His hands, though, told a different story if anyone bothered to look. They were steady, precise, the hands of someone who'd held lives in their balance and knew exactly what pressure to apply. Tonight, like most Tuesday evenings, Celestine's hummed with the quiet confidence of old money and new power. The restaurant occupied the corner of a glass tower in the financial district, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city's glittering skyline. Vincent had just finished serving appetizers to a table of investment bankers when he noticed her. Helena Ashford sat alone at table 12, the window seat she always requested when she dined here, which was twice monthly like clockwork. Vincent knew her routine because knowing patterns was survival, a habit from his previous life that refused to die. She was 42, CEO of Ashford Technologies, and worth somewhere north of $3 billion according to the business magazine stacked in the break room. Tonight, she wore a slate-gray suit that probably cost more than Vincent made in 6 months, her auburn hair pulled back in a style that said she'd come straight from the office. What most people didn't know about Helena Ashford, and what Vincent had learned from carefully eavesdropped conversations over the past year, was that she collected companies the way some people collected art. She'd buy them, strip them for parts, and sell off whatever remained profitable. Efficient. Ruthless. Entirely legal and entirely devastating to the families who'd built those businesses over generations. Vincent approached her table with a wine list. Helena glanced up, and for just a moment, their eyes met. There was something in her gaze tonight, something Vincent's trained instincts recognized immediately, fear masquerading as control. She was expecting something, waiting for something, and whatever it was made her nervous enough to mask it with her usual cool efficiency. "The Bordeaux, please," she said, her voice steady despite what Vincent could read in the tension around her eyes. "The excellent choice," Vincent replied, his voice deliberately unremarkable. He turned toward the wine cellar, and that's when he saw them. 4 men entering through the main doors at exactly 9:37. Vincent's internal clock had noted the time automatically, another reflex from the years when timing meant the difference between a peaceful resolution and a body count. These men moved wrong for Celestines. Their clothes were a tempting formal, dark jeans paired with button-down shirts, shoes polished but scuffed at the edges. But it wasn't their attire that triggered Vincent's alarms. It was their formation. They'd entered in a diamond pattern, spreading out immediately to cover different angles of the room. The lead man, late 30s with a weathered face and carpenter's hands, scanned the restaurant with military precision. His eyes found Helena Ashford and locked on with an intensity that made Vincent's pulse quicken. The second man, younger but with the same sharp jawline and similar build, moved to cover the kitchen entrance. The third, stockier and older, positioned himself near the bar. The fourth, lean and nervous, hovered near the door as if ready to bolt or block an exit. Brothers, Vincent assessed immediately. The lead and the second shared too many features to be anything else. Family operation. Personal grudge. The most dangerous kind. Vincent's mind catalogued everything in the 3 seconds it took him to change direction. The lead wore a jacket despite the warm evening, which meant he was hiding something. The nervous one kept touching his hip pocket. The older one had the stillness of someone who'd done violence before and made peace with it. The younger brother carried rage like a second skin, barely contained beneath a veneer of forced calm. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Maurice, the maitre d', approached with his usual professional warmth, completely oblivious to the danger Vincent could smell like smoke before a fire. "We're here to see someone," the lead man said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet dining room. Several diners had picked up on the wrongness, conversations pausing mid-sentence, instincts triggering warnings their conscious minds hadn't yet processed. Vincent moved without thinking, his feet carrying him toward the wine cellar while his mind raced through calculations. 3 years of forced retirement. 3 years of building a life where his daughter Sophia could grow up normal, where PTA meetings and soccer practices replaced hostage situations and armed standoffs. 3 years of convincing himself he'd made the right choice walking away. He reached the wine cellar and grabbed the Bordeaux Helena had ordered, his hands performing the task while his brain worked the problem. He'd been 12 years in crisis negotiation before the incident that ended his career. 43 successful resolutions. 43 times he'd talked desperate people away from the edge. The 44th time, he'd failed, and a young woman had died while he'd watched helplessly through a scope. That failure had broken something in him, or maybe it had fixed something. Either way, he'd walked away, taken his pension, and disappeared into the anonymous machinery of service industry work. His captain had understood. His therapist had approved. His daughter, only 7 at the time, had just been happy to have him home for dinner. Vincent emerged from the wine cellar to find the situation deteriorating rapidly. The 4 men had moved deeper into the restaurant, and the lead was now standing 10 feet from Helena's table. Other diners were starting to notice, their voices dropping to whispers, some reaching for phones. "Helena Ashford," the lead man said, his voice steady but edged with something dark and final. "My name is Devin Webb. I think you remember my father's company. Webb Manufacturing. You bought it 3 years ago." Helena stood slowly, her face pale but composed. Vincent saw her hands grip the edge of the table, knuckles white. "I remember," she said quietly. "What do you want?" "What I want," Devin Webb said, and now Vincent could hear the grief beneath the anger, raw and bleeding, "is for you to understand what you took from us. My father built that company over 40 years. It was his life. When you destroyed it, you destroyed him. He put a gun to his head 8 months ago because of you." The restaurant had gone completely silent now. Vincent felt the weight of 3 years of peaceful anonymity pressing against the instincts that had defined him for over a decade. He looked at the Bordeaux in his hand, expensive wine for a woman who collected broken dreams. He looked at Devin Webb and his 3 companions, men who'd crossed a line tonight that could never be uncrossed. Then he looked at the other diners, innocent people who'd come here for an evening of elegance and escape, now frozen in fear as violence bloomed in their safe space. Sophia had a dance recital on Friday. She'd been practicing for weeks, excited to show him her routine. He'd promised to be there, front row, camera ready. Vincent set down the wine on the nearest table and stepped forward, his hands visible and empty, his voice calm and unremarkable as he'd trained it to be all those years ago. "When silence breaks?" The question hung in the air like smoke after gunfire. Devin Webb's eyes narrowed as he processed the interruption, trying to place this ordinary waiter who'd just inserted himself into a moment 3 years in the making. His brother Marcus shifted position, hand moving closer to whatever he carried at his hip. Tyler Grant, the stocky one by the bar, tensed like a coiled spring. Ramon Silva, still near the door, looked between Devin and Vincent with growing confusion. Vincent kept his hands visible, palms open at his sides, a gesture he'd used hundreds of times before. Non-threatening but confident. Present but not confrontational. The body language of someone who belonged in this conversation, who had earned the right to speak. "I don't know you," Devin said slowly, his voice carrying a warning. "This doesn't concern you." "You're right on both counts," Vincent agreed, taking one measured step forward. "Not close enough to be threatening, but close enough to be acknowledged. I'm nobody important. Just a waiter. But see, the thing is, you brought this into my workplace. That makes it my concern." Helena remained standing, her breath shallow, calculating her options. Vincent could see her mind working, could see her trying to determine if this waiter was help or another complication. She had the look of someone who'd spent a career controlling every variable suddenly discovering variables she couldn't control. "Everyone here is scared," Vincent continued, his voice carrying just far enough to be heard but maintaining an intimate tone, as if this were a private conversation. "The couple by the window, they're celebrating their anniversary. 25 years. The man keeps touching the gift box in his pocket. The woman at table 6 came here to forget that her son deployed to Afghanistan yesterday. The teenager bussing tables is working his way through community college. Devon's jaw tightened, but Vincent saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes. These weren't just nameless faces anymore. They were people with stories. "I'm not here to hurt anyone else," Devon said, but his conviction wavered slightly. "This is about her. About justice." "Justice," Vincent repeated the word, tasting it. "I spent 12 years in crisis negotiation before I started serving soup. You know how many times I heard that word? How many people stood where you're standing now, absolutely convinced they were doing the right thing?" Marcus Webb spoke for the first time, his voice younger and harder than his brother's. "You don't know anything about what we've been through. What she took from us." "You're right again," Vincent said, meeting Marcus's angry stare without flinching. "I don't know your specific pain. But I know what loss looks like. I know what it sounds like when someone's world collapses. And I know what happens next if this plays out the way you're planning." A memory flashed through Vincent's mind, unbidden and sharp. A parking garage. A 23-year-old woman named Rebecca Ortiz with a gun to her temple and tears streaming down her face. Vincent had been on the phone with her for 40 minutes, building rapport, finding connection, creating hope. He'd been seconds away from talking her down when her ex-boyfriend had appeared, and everything had shattered. The gunshot had echoed through Vincent's phone, through his head, through his dreams for the next 3 years. He'd been unable to save Rebecca because he'd miscalculated, missed something, failed to see the complete picture. That failure had taught him that sometimes the only way to prevent tragedy was to understand it completely, to see all the moving pieces before they collided. Helena finally spoke, her voice steadier than Vincent expected. "Devon Webb. I remember your father's file. Harold Webb, founder and CEO of Webb Manufacturing. I bought the company because it was hemorrhaging money, drowning in debt, and heading toward bankruptcy anyway. What I did was business." "You gutted it," Devon shot back, his composure cracking. "Sold the equipment, fired everyone, dissolved 40 years of work in 6 months. My father didn't die because the company was failing. He died because you destroyed his life's purpose. Your father was 68 years old, drowning in medical bills from your mother's cancer treatments, and watching his company die by inches," Helena said, and Vincent heard something new in her voice. Not defensiveness, but something closer to grief. "I bought it for the patents and the real estate. I'm not going to apologize for running a business. But I'm not going to pretend I didn't know the cost." Vincent watched the dynamics shift. This was the moment. The point where anger could either ignite into action or transform into understanding. He'd seen it go both ways. "Devon," Vincent said quietly, drawing the man's attention back to him. "What happens next? Let's say you do what you came here to do. Then what? Your father's still gone. The company's still gone. But now you're gone too. Your brother. Your friends. Everyone in this room becomes a witness to your worst moment. Is that the legacy Harold Webb would want?" "Don't talk about my father like you knew him," Devon snapped, but there was less fire now, more exhaustion. Vincent took another small step forward. "I had a daughter," he said, the words coming from somewhere deep and honest. "Still do. Sophia. She's 10 now. 3 years ago, I had to decide whether to keep doing a job I was good at or be the father she needed. I chose her. Every day I chose her. But I still wake up some nights thinking about the people I couldn't save." He paused, letting that sink in. "Your father spent 40 years building something. But he also spent 40 years building you. Which legacy matters more?" Marcus Webb's hand had moved away from his hip. Tyler Grant was watching Devon with uncertainty. Ramon Silva had stopped looking nervous and started looking thoughtful. The formation they'd entered with had dissolved into something more fragile, more human. Helena stepped out from behind her table, and Vincent tensed, ready to intervene if the movement triggered violence. But she didn't approach Devon. Instead, she opened her purse and pulled out a business card, holding it between two fingers like a white flag. "I can't bring your father back," she said, her voice stripped of corporate polish. "I can't undo the damage. But I can offer you information you don't have." Webb Manufacturing had $3 million in undisclosed debt. Your father had taken out personal loans to cover payroll for 8 months. He was 3 weeks from total bankruptcy when I made the offer. I paid enough to clear his personal debts and give him a clean exit. Devon's face showed the war between what he believed and what he was hearing. "He never told us." "He was protecting you," Helena said. "The same way I imagine he protected you from 100 other burdens over the years. I made business decisions that hurt people. I know that. I've known it for years. But your father made choices too, and some of them were about sparing you pain." The restaurant remained frozen, but the quality of the silence had changed. It was no longer the silence of fear but of held breath, of waiting to see which direction the moment would tip. Vincent saw Sophia's face in his mind. Her dance recital. Her laughter. Her questions about why he'd stopped being a police negotiator, and his simple answer that some jobs were important but being her dad was more important. "Devon," Vincent said one final time. "You walked in here tonight with a choice already made. But you've got another choice right now. You can leave with your brother, go home, and figure out how to honor your father by living well. Or you can make this your last free moment. I'm not a cop anymore. I'm just a waiter. But I'm asking you, as so.